Hey everyone, there has once again been a massive information drop by Ironmace given the current situation regarding Nexon and their claims over Dark and Darker. The whole information drop includes the Korean response to the DMCA takedown claim, which I've talked about in my previous video, concept art comparisons, a direct list of assets used and purchased in Dark and Darker, and also for any of you developers out there, they also published their Git logs for the first year of development to show how they built Dark and Darker from the ground up. Now, one of the most important in my opinion, and the one we're going to be looking at today, is the direct comparison of assets, mostly their concept art and classes, which Nexon are claiming to be stolen, so let's take a look at these. Now, Ironmace claims that the classes in Dark and Darker are made up of classes commonly handled in Dungeons and Dragons and medieval fantasy games influenced by them, and they aim for familiar, classic fantasy concepts as well. Therefore, it cannot be seen that it has any distinctive features of Dark and Darker in its appearance or design. When developing Dark and Darker, they claim they worked on the class concept based on the following three concerns. What are the most familiar classes in the memories of classic fantasy fans? What designs can you accept without hesitation even if you are not a fan of classic fantasy? And what is the range that can be expressed with the assets that they actually own? Now, they are also very transparent in saying that P3 and Dark do have the same concept artist, and this is why the characters that are portrayed or the painting style may feel similar. But there are significant differences in detailed compositions such as costumes. So let's take a look and really see how similar these concepts actually are. First off, we have the Barbarian, perhaps the favourite in all of Dark and Darker, which Nexon is claiming is very similar to their concept art. Now, Ironmace claims that Dark and Darker's Barbarian was created based on works from common fantasy worlds and furthermore those used in various other games. They say even in the details there are differences. P3's Barbarian is more colourful than Dark and Darker's Barbarian, such as the horns, the Nordic patterns of armour, the beard shape in the cape, and the style is more mixed. The shape of the helmet may look similar by adopting the design of the actual German helmet, the Yermundbu, but the detailed design is completely different. Now, as far as I can see, the only similarities that could be drawn from these two concepts is the big bushy beard, the use of the same felling axe, and as Ironmace stated, the Yermundbu, which is by no means claimable by Nexon. Even the helmet, although similar, does have stark differences on the sides and pattern, and I believe the similarities could easily be put down to the same concept artist in this case. And this was one of the classes that had the most similarities drawn between the two. Stick around because the last was probably the worst in terms of similarities. Moving on to the fighter, we can observe that they do look very different. The only direct similarity that can really be noted in this concept is once again the helmet worn by the fighter, which again is a very common aspect across many concept arts regarding medieval fantasy fighters. Perhaps at a closer look you can spot some smaller similarities such as the leather wraps around their thighs, and the equipment that they're using such as the arming sword, the backpack, and even the holes across the helmet marked on the sides are somewhat similar but very different in design. Ironmace have stated that Nexon claims that P3's tanker, the Dark and Darker fighter, were produced in a similar form. However, as you can see from this comparison, except for the open helmet, everything is different, including the appearance, armor design, weapon design, bag, and props. The figure wearing an open helmet is just a type of expression commonly used to show a character's face because it is obscured. And really, the only concern I have regarding these two is the similar use of equipment, as I stated before, but other than that, it could easily be laid down to having the same concept artist working on both projects. Regarding the Ranger comparisons, I completely agree with Ironmace on this one when they say that there is nothing identical about them other than they wear hoods and have bows, which, if any of you are fans of medieval fantasy, know is very commonplace among Rangers. They claim that Dark and Darker's Ranger has borrowed the overall colour from common designs to keep the sensibility of the old fantasy intact. Also, in order to express the concept of a hunter who fights while hiding in the dark, the use of colour was limited and designed with low saturation. Honestly, Ironmace don't see any similarities here at all, and I don't see any similarities here at all, but let me know in the comments if you can see anything small that I might be missing. On to our Gandalf enjoyers, we have the Wizard. Much like the fighter, there are one or two similarities that I can note between the two concepts. For the keen-eyed among you, the leather straps across the front of their robes are very similar, and definitely more of a unique part of the design, and also the woodland-inspired magical staff could be seen as quite a similar design too. However, Ironmace have gone for a completely different look otherwise, with more cumbersome robes, an older, more Gandalf-like wizard who looks like he still has a whole lot of fight in him. Overall, nothing crazy to be noted here with regards to similarities. The Rogue notes a couple of similarities, such as the satchel across their side, the expression they have in their concept art, and lastly their hooded appearance. Ironmace have stated that in the case of Rogue, besides wearing a hood, the P3 and Darker robes have completely different components such as weapons and costumes. In all honesty, I believe they've ignored the similarities between their expression and satchel, but again we have to remember it is the same concept artist, and each artist has their own way of expressing their work, so it's impossible to not have any kind of crossover between the two designs. Now moving on to the last and, in my opinion, most dangerous comparison between Ironmace and Nexon, we have the Cleric. The Cleric perhaps has the most similarities out of all the classes, and it was the only one that kind of had me doubting Ironmace when I first saw it. I'll let you guys make up your own mind on this one, but here's a quick look at it. In my opinion, besides colouring and minute equipment difference, their design is nearly almost identical. The backpack, the chainmail, the spellbook, the satchel across their side, and even the scarf look extremely similar. This by far is probably going to be the most controversial comparison when it comes to the community, and also when it comes to the legal side of things. Now, Ironmace stated that it was designed with reference to the assets that they had available, and this look was very common among concept art in medieval fantasy worlds. However, even looking across the concept art that they provided in the document, it's kind of hard to draw that exact design from them. I'd be very interested to know what you guys think about this one, as it's really the only one I have my reservations and doubt about. Ironmace, to round off the whole thing, stated that the allegations of theft is only a phenomenon that arises from the fact that the concept of the two projects are oriented towards a medieval fantasy worldview. We, the development team of Ironmace, focused on the direction of the game we were aiming for, designed and expressed it accordingly, and revealed that the game was not made by taking the parts that were produced in P3 as it is. Now, for the most part, after reviewing the information and having a lot of background in medieval fantasy, I've played Dungeons and Dragons for so many years now, I'm a diehard fan of Lord of the Rings, and I'm really just all about that fantasy world. I can kind of see where Ironmace are pulling their inspiration from, and I don't believe the similarities are enough to really claim them as being owned by Nexon. Besides the Cleric, that one was a little dodgy. But yeah, by the end of the day, we'll have to see what comes of this. I'm sure we can at least all be thankful for the fact that Ironmace are being fully transparent and giving us a lot of information as it becomes available, which is much more than most developers would do these days for their community. Let me know what you all think about these similarities and the concept art in the comments. I'm sure it's still going to be probably quite a long way until we are back to playing Dark and Darker, and I'm really looking forward to hearing from Ironmace whether or not we're going to be seeing a playtest in the coming months. Thank you for watching, and I'll keep you updated as more information comes in. I'll see you in the next one.